despise guessing games.
I'm gonna be king of Pride Rock.
Oh, goody. Yes. Well, forgive me for not leaping for joy.
Did you know that Scar's original name was Taka, meaning waste in Swahili? A name that became the emptiness eventually consuming him like a shadow devouring light. What if that emptiness could have been filled with purpose instead of jealousy? Today we're exploring the complete psychological breakdown of how Scar transformed from a respected prince with potential to the murderous villain who killed his own brother. We'll analyze deleted scenes, early character concepts, and those subtle hints throughout the film that tell a much more complex story about his fall from grace. If you've ever wondered what makes a villain like Scar tick, this video will finally give you answers. Did you know that before he was the villain we all recognize, Scar was actually a respected prince with incredible potential? Let's look at what could have been. When we think about Scar, our minds immediately jump to that sinister smile, that jealous glare, and that moment he lets Mufasa fall to his death. But Scar wasn't born a villain. He entered the world as the second son of the king, blessed with an intellect that even rivaled Mufasa's physical prowess. Born with the name Taka, which means want or lack in Swahili, he possessed remarkable natural leadership abilities. While Mufasa was training to become the powerful king that would rule with strength, young Taka was developing a sharp mind that could analyze situations and find solutions that brute force alone couldn't solve. The Pride recognized this intelligence, and many of the lions would often seek out his perspective on matters that required more than a strong roar. Growing up as the second-born prince was like being a bright flame constantly overshadowed by Mufasa's brilliant sun. His light, though distinct and valuable, could never quite shine beyond his brother's radiance. No matter how brilliant Taka was, the shadow of Mufasa was always looming over him. This constant dimming of his potential talents planted those first seeds of resentment, even while the Pride still valued his unique intellectual contributions. What's really interesting is that early concept art for The Lion King shows Scar looking much more regal and far less sinister than the version we ultimately got in the film. His mane was fuller, his features more noble, and he lacked many of the visual cues that scream villain in the final design. This artistic choice suggests the creators initially envisioned a character who wasn't inherently evil, but someone who had the potential for greatness. Young Taka's remarkable intelligence and strategic thinking could have made him the perfect advisor to Mufasa's throne. In fact, the Pride lands would have benefited immensely from having both brothers working together. Mufasa's strength paired with Scar's intellect would have created an unstoppable leadership duo. Instead of becoming the throne's greatest enemy, he could have been its greatest asset. There were several scenes that never made it to the final cut of the film that hint at Scar's previous position of respect within the Pride. One particularly telling deleted scene shows other lions approaching Scar for counsel on a difficult situation, demonstrating that before his fall, the Pride valued his wisdom and insight. They didn't see him as the skulking villain in the shadows, but as a thoughtful prince whose opinion carried weight. The transformation from respected prince to scheming villain wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a gradual process, a corruption that occurred choice by choice. But what about this corruption? What exactly pushed Scar down this dark path? How did someone with so much potential for greatness end up becoming one of Disney's most memorable villains? The evidence throughout the Lion King lore suggests that Scar wasn't born evil. He wasn't destined from birth to become the villain we know. Instead, he made a series of choices that gradually twisted his potential and corrupted his character. His intelligence, which could have been used to help the Pride thrive, became the tool he would use to orchestrate its downfall. His understanding of others, which could have made him a great diplomat, became his method for manipulation. His fall from grace wasn't a solitary journey, but the heartbreaking collapse of what was once the Pride Land's most powerful partnership. Hidden throughout Lion King lore are glimpses of a time when Scar and Mufasa weren't rivals, but an unstoppable team that combined physical might with tactical brilliance. A brotherhood so strong that no one could have predicted how violently it would shatter. When we look at the Lion King 6 New Adventures books, we find Mufasa and Taka as cubs playing together in the savannah while developing their unique abilities. Their father, King Ahadi, taught both princes about leadership, but they absorbed these lessons differently. Mufasa embraced physical kingship, while Taka analyzed everything from migration patterns to interspecies politics. These differences became their greatest strength during adolescence, when they formed an incredible hunting partnership throughout the Pride Lands. During one legendary hunt, hunt, the brothers trapped an entire buffalo herd in a narrow ravine. Mufasa's powerful roar echoed through the canyon walls, while Taka had strategically positioned lionesses at every escape route. The Pride's elders still whisper about this hunt as the perfect example of how the brothers' contrasting talents created something extraordinary when combined. This same complementary approach saved the kingdom during a terrible drought. When water grew scarce and animals began fighting over resources, Mufasa prepared for confrontation, but Taka negotiated sharing agreements that prevented bloodshed. My brother sees solutions where I see only obstacles, Mufasa told their father, according to Prideland Chronicles, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Most fans never learned about Scar's facial mark origin, which completely transforms our understanding of his character. According to The Lion King, A Tale of Two Brothers, Taka received his scar while saving Mufasa from a charging buffalo. During a border dispute with a rival Pride, Taka spotted an ambush his stronger brother had missed. Without hesitation, he threw himself between Mufasa and danger, suffering a horn slash across his eye. Mufasa was the first to call him Scar, not as an insult but as a badge of honor symbolizing his brother's ultimate sacrifice. After this incident, the brothers became inseparable, with Mufasa deferring to Taka on matters requiring careful thought while Taka stepped back when situations demanded Mufasa's commanding presence. The Pride viewed them as the perfect example of royal solidarity. The first visible crack appeared when Mufasa was formally chosen as the next king. Though Taka initially accepted this with grace, continuing to support his brother, his expression changed the first time Mufasa made an important decision without consulting him. Something died in his eyes that day, recalled an elderly lioness who had witnessed the moment. It wasn't anger I saw, but something worse. Disappointment. What transformed this powerful alliance into deadly rivalry wasn't a single dramatic moment, but a slow erosion of mutual respect. As Mufasa's physical abilities gained more attention and praise from the Pride, Taka's intellectual contributions became increasingly overlooked. During one hunting council, when Taka offered a sophisticated strategy, another lion interrupted. Why complicate things when Mufasa's strength alone can solve our problems? The Pride laughed, while Mufasa remained silent instead of defending his brother. The lion who once saved his brother's life found himself relegated to the shadows, his ideas dismissed, his counsel ignored. The scarred prince who once stood proudly beside the future king now walked alone, the warmth of brotherhood cooling into bitter resentment with each passing season. Those overlooked contributions that pushed Taka to the shadows held the seeds of something extraordinary. What's truly heartbreaking about Scar's story isn't that he lacked heroic qualities, it's that he possessed them all in abundance. The same mind that strategized hunts and negotiated peace treaties could have made him one of the Pride Land's greatest protectors instead of its destroyer. Early drafts of the Lion King script painted Scar in a completely different light. He was intelligent and a genuine problem solver who protected the Pride from threats that couldn't be defeated through physical strength alone. During one memorable deleted sequence, Scar devised an elaborate plan to save vulnerable cubs from stampeding elephants by using his knowledge of terrain and animal behavior. He calculated the elephant's likely path and created a diversion that redirected them away from the cubs' hiding place. This scene would have established him as not just clever but heroic, someone who used his intellect to save lives rather than take them. Scar's relationship with the hyenas was initially much more nuanced too. Production notes reveal he approached these outcasts with diplomatic intentions, recognizing that growing conflict between lions and hyenas threatened both species. While Mufasa pushed for strict territorial boundaries, Scar proposed coexistence through negotiated agreements. He understood the hyenas weren't evil but desperate for resources. His vision could have prevented years of conflict but was rejected for tradition's sake. Like a finely tuned instrument left to gather dust, Scar's talent for diplomacy eventually corroded into manipulation when left unused for its intended purpose. The Lion King's directors confirmed they intentionally gave Scar leadership qualities that would have perfectly complemented Mufasa's. "We designed Scar to be the perfect counterbalance to Mufasa," explained co-director Roger Allers. Where Mufasa had the charisma and strength to inspire, Scar had the analytical mind to plan and foresee problems. Together, they could have been unstoppable. This makes his descent into villainy even more tragic. He possessed everything needed for greatness, but corrupted his gifts when they weren't properly valued. Another deleted scene revealed Scar's heroic potential in action. During a massive brush fire, he calculated wind patterns and led several cubs to safety through a path others couldn't see. After this rescue, Mufasa publicly acknowledged Scar's contribution, but the Pride celebration focused primarily on Mufasa's strength in battling the flames directly. This subtle slight illustrated how Scar's genuine heroism was overshadowed, feeding his resentment. Early character development notes showed various animal species initially seeking Scar's counsel for problems requiring creative solutions. Elephants consulted him about migration routes, while zebras respected his ability to negotiate fair water access during droughts. He had earned genuine respect through his contributions to the wider community. This foundation of legitimate respect makes his eventual manipulation of these same animals all the more disturbing. He corrupted relationships initially built on trust and service. The question that haunts these revelations is why someone with such remarkable potential would abandon the hero's path. The evidence suggests Scar's downfall wasn't triggered by a lack of ability, but by the persistent devaluation of his particular type of brilliance. In a pride that celebrated physical prowess above all, his intellectual and diplomatic gifts were acknowledged but never truly honored in the way he believed they deserved. While the Pride lands celebrated physical strength, another defining moment sealed Scar's villain origin story that nobody talks about. Before the stampede that killed Mufasa, before the hyena army, there was a critical choice Scar faced that would determine his entire path. This wasn't about seizing the throne, but something far more personal and devastating. The moment that transformed Taka into Scar wasn't physical. It was the exact instant when his soul made a permanent choice. According to original production notes from the Lion King's development team, Taka's fateful injury came during a buffalo incident where he made a catastrophic moral decision. When faced with danger alongside Mufasa, Taka chose self-preservation, retreating to safety while Mufasa stood his ground against the charging buffalo. The physical scar he received became the outward manifestation of his internal shame, a permanent reminder of his cowardice that would follow him forever. Have you ever wondered how a single moment of weakness can forever change someone's destiny? This moment of cowardice led directly to public humiliation. King Ahadi called Taka before the entire Pride to account for his actions. Rather than showing remorse, Taka became defensive, blaming Mufasa for putting them in danger. When given the chance for redemption, Taka refused, instead embracing his new nickname Scar as a symbol of the Pride's perceived unfair treatment of him. This confrontation represented the true point of no return. The original script included a powerful exchange where King Ahadi, trying to reach his son's better nature, told him, "Your actions today reflect not who you are, but who you choose to be." Taka's chilling response revealed his transformation. "Then perhaps it's time I became who I truly am." This exchange marked when Taka fully embraced becoming Scar, not just in name, but in spirit. Rob Minkoff, one of the film's directors, described this pivotal scene as the moment when a character actively chooses their path. "We wanted to show that villainy isn't born, it's chosen." This insight was echoed by co-director Roger Allers, who later remarked in an interview, "The most compelling villains are those who could have been heroes but made different choices when faced with critical moments." What makes this revelation particularly tragic is that after this incident, Mufasa approached Scar privately, offering reconciliation. In this deleted scene, Mufasa acknowledged his brother's brilliance and proposed they lead together, Mufasa as king, with Scar as his trusted advisor. But the transformation had already begun. Scar interpreted this gesture as pity and condescension rather than opportunity. The aftermath of this rejection reveals the most disturbing aspect of Scar's transformation. Prior to this incident, his resentment toward Mufasa was passive. After rejecting redemption, Scar's journal entries, featured in early promotional materials, show his thoughts turning increasingly dark. One haunting passage reads, "If they will only value strength, then I shall show them what true power looks like." What followed was a calculated dismantling of his former self. Scar began avoiding council meetings, disappeared for long periods, and was first spotted with hyenas shortly after. The Pride's records note this change, with one elder lioness observing, "Taka's eyes have changed. There is calculation where there once was curiosity." The evidence suggests Scar's transformation wasn't one dramatic moment, but his response to failure. When confronted with his shortcomings, instead of embracing growth, Scar redefined himself. recasting his failure as others' failure to appreciate him. This warped perspective justified increasingly dark actions, culminating in his most infamous deed. This corruption of Scar's mind wasn't just a side effect of his villainous transformation, it was the most devastating weapon in his arsenal. The brilliant mind that could have elevated the Pride Lands instead engineered its downfall, and what makes this so terrifying is how methodically he weaponized his greatest gift against the kingdom. Scar's intelligence became truly dangerous because he understood psychology deeply. The Be Prepared sequence only hints at his manipulative brilliance, but original storyboards showed Scar studying the hyenas for months, learning their pain points before approaching them. He crafted an entire ideology around their exclusion, positioning himself as their savior while turning their hunger into hatred. His promise, "Stick with me and you'll never go hungry again," offered them belonging, purpose, and revenge. A psychological masterpiece that transformed outcasts into loyal soldiers. His psychological warfare reached its most chilling peak with Simba. Concept notes reveal Scar had multiple plans to eliminate the cub, but chose manipulation because it would devastate more thoroughly than simply killing him. By convincing Simba he caused his father's death, Scar broke him from within, ensuring that even if Simba survived physically, his emotional wounds would prevent him from ever challenging for the throne. This same calculated cruelty appeared in the final battle when Scar revealed his true role in Mufasa's death. The psychological payoff of watching Simba's horror was as rewarding to him as the throne itself. Lead writer Irene Mekki describes Scar as a psychological predator who studies others not to help but to harm, explicitly modeling him after Shakespeare's Iago from Othello. According to Mekki, Scar doesn't just want power, he wants to watch others realize they've been outsmarted as he takes it. Animator Andreas Deha designed Scar's eyes to constantly calculate, to show a mind that never stops analyzing how to use others' weaknesses against them. Watch how his eyes dart around every scene, assessing vulnerabilities before speaking. His physical weakness became its own weapon as animals underestimated him, never suspecting the lethal intellect behind his seemingly lazy exterior. What's particularly disturbing is how Scar systematically reversed his beneficial talents. His diplomatic finesse that once forged alliances now fractured them. His environmental insights became weapons of mass starvation. Deleted story concepts showed Scar actively prevented migration during the drought by positioning hyena patrols at key water sources and escape routes, a calculated strategy to create dependency. As the Pride grew desperate from hunger and thirst, their resistance weakened, making them easier to control. Scar created an alternate reality within the Pride Lands through careful information control. He constructed narratives that rewrote history, convincing the Pride that Mufasa's reign had been flawed, that current suffering was temporary, and that questioning his leadership was treasonous. By isolating dissenters and rewarding loyalty, he created an environment where truth became malleable. Mind control on a kingdom-wide scale. The transformation of Scar's gifts into weapons raises disturbing questions about intelligence without compassion. The same mind that could track migration patterns to help animals find water instead blocked those routes to cause suffering. His talent for reading emotions became a tool for exploiting fears rather than alleviating them. His mind, once the Pride's greatest potential asset, became a cold, calculating machine of manipulation, methodically dismantling the kingdom from within. And that's the true tragedy of Scar's story. He wasn't born a villain, but created through his own choices. What makes it so devastating is how close he came to greatness. In every crucial moment, Scar chose resentment over reconciliation, turning his remarkable gifts into weapons rather than tools for good. His journey mirrors our own choices. We all stand at similar crossroads where our talents can either serve others or only ourselves. What potential lies dormant in your own life, waiting to blossom or wither? The line between hero and villain isn't about what gifts you're born with, but how you choose to use them. When we look at Scar, we don't just see a villain, but a garden of heroic possibilities that withered on the vine of his bitterness.